Hi there, I'm Alison Kirak, owner of Stitch Real Estate Transaction Coordination Company, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am diving deeper on an Ask Alison, Ask Me Anything question. This is actually something that comes up frequently that other TCs reach out to me because they're struggling with, which is how do you deal with an unresponsive agent? Primarily an unresponsive agent on the other side of the transaction. So not your client, but the agent representing the buyer seller, whatever the opposite side of the transaction is. Now, before we dive into this video, I just want to do a quick reminder that if you've been enjoying any of my videos, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss anything else we have coming up. And if you're new here, be sure to head to my channel. I've got lots of other great videos for you with all kinds of content, stuff for agents, and a ton of stuff specifically for TCs. All right, now diving into this topic. So first I kind of want to go over, figuring out the root of the problem, and then I'm going to share 3 of my top tips to address this issue. Unfortunately, can be kind of a common issue, but I've had pretty good luck that I would say 98%, 99% of my transactions, I don't deal with this, and these tips are really helpful and the reasons why. All right, so first of all, I want you to change your mindset on this, because I think if you're a TC that's experienced this, it can kind of feel like, they think I'm just like the lowly TC, I'm not as important, the agent, that's why they're not copying me. Maybe they think I'm annoying with all my follow-up emails, all that kind of stuff. I've definitely had those thoughts before, but 99% of the time that is absolutely not the case. So change your mindset on that, because I know if you feel a sense of fear or undeservingness to get a response or something like that, you feel dismissed by the other agent, then it's going to be a little more challenging you for overcome that and want to send that other follow-up or want to pick up the phone and call. And so change your mindset on that, because I can guarantee you 99% of the time that's not the issue. So we have to remember that depending on how we structure our TC business, so for me and most of the coordinators I work with and coach, we usually get a file once the documentation has been executed. So whether that's a listing agreement or a contract, something like that, we're getting it after there's probably been a lot of back and forth negotiation, on a contract especially. They may have had to reach out to the agent's schedule showing, or vice versa. They may have done some negotiations back and forth, most likely, had other conversations about the home. So the other agent is just going to think of our client as their primary contact, which is totally understandable. They probably have their number saved in their phone, maybe they've been texting back and forth and emailing, they've talked on the phone, things like that. So when they think of a transaction, they're going to think of our agent primarily. So that's one of the reasons that's who's going to first come to mind if they just go to send a text or something. Now, if we establish ourselves up front pretty well once we do start working on the transaction with emails and stuff like that, then it should become more clear for them to start including us, but it may take an email or two for them to remember if they don't have a perfectly set up CRM where they can add our information to the transaction on their end too. So a lot of this is just going to be because they've been working with our agent, so primarily one-on-one, that when we do step in the transaction, it may take a little bit for them to remember and realize that we're there to assist and be part of the transaction as well. Okay, and another issue on why an agent may not be including us is maybe our type of communication. So as a transaction coordinator, we primarily communicate via email. Just that way, it's the easiest way to keep all parties we want to copied and in the loop, and also to keep all our communication organized and likely tie it back to our transaction management system as well. Because of this, it may be difficult to get a hold of the agent because agents simply are notorious for not having the most organized email inboxes, not being the best at keeping up with their emails and things like that. Email can often be a big pain point for agents, which is why a transaction coordinator can be so useful. So it's just important to keep that in mind. If you're always sending emails, and this is going to go into our first tip as well, it may be just that you're kind of getting lost in their busy inbox. So that's going to lead us actually straight into our first tip. But just remember that it's probably not because they think you aren't important as a TC. It's probably just because they're used to communicating with your agent, and also maybe they don't always check their emails as much as they should, or an email got lost in translation. So change your mindset on that and apply these 3 tips if you're having any issues. All right, so tip number 1, as I just mentioned, email can be a big pain point for agents, and if they're not working with a transaction coordinator, that can kind of create a little bit of distance or disconnect in the communication. So tip number 1 is going to be to try to change up your communication style. And this applies to any parties in the transaction that you're having trouble getting a hold with. But I find in most cases, people are asking about the other agent specifically. So that's what we're going to use in all these examples. So tip 1, change up your communication style. As I mentioned, you probably like working primarily out of email. It's still going to always be my recommendation. Just the paper trail, the ability to keep everyone in the loop, streamline, tie it to your transaction management system, efficiency, always going to recommend email. But sometimes you may need to reach out a different way. So if you've sent 2, 3, 4, 5 emails to the other agent without a response, I would go ahead and try this tip first. So my first tip to change up the communication style is going to be trying to send a text. And I would recommend sending a group text with your client, your agent you're working directly with, and the other agent. This way, your agent can be notified that maybe we've been waiting on something a little longer than we typically would if we would have just gotten a response to the email. And the agent can step in and respond as well too on your behalf, or follow up on your behalf too, because even our agents are probably better at checking texts than emails. That's why we're here, right? And so this is a good tip because I find agents do typically respond better to text. It just can, it can get just as unorganized, but typically I think we're all pretty good at checking our phones all the time. So getting the text message alert can be a good way to reach them. And this way you're still able to group your agent in, or maybe someone else as a part of the transaction if possible. That way it kind of has the same effect as email. You can always screenshot it and send it to yourself and upload to the file if you need to too. So try that. That's my first tip if we want to change it up, just that way we can also keep our agent in the loop. But then the other option, if we're not getting responses this way, always can try to pick up the phone and call. The reason this is my last recommendation is because then we would need to convey any potential conversation we had back to our agent. So just a little bit of a communication, breakdown there instead of having everyone on one email or text thread. But sometimes you just gotta pick up the phone and call. So try to change up the communication method. If that doesn't work, then we're gonna head to tip number 2. All right, so tip number 2 is going to be, don't be afraid to bring something or escalate a situation to your agent's attention if necessary. So maybe I've tried a couple emails, I've tried a text, maybe I tried a call, I'm still not getting the answers or the kind of communication I really need. So I'm gonna go ahead and maybe bring it up to my agent. Depending on the urgency of the situation, I may go ahead and just send them a direct text. Hey, I haven't heard back from Agent A on this, just wanted to give you an update as we're nearing this deadline, or something like that. A lot of times when this happens, I'll notice people will go ahead and then send a text directly, loop me in, something like that. And sometimes just having the other agent, our agent, escalate it to the agent versus us can kind of provide more of a sense of urgency and get a little bit more of the other agent's attention. So another option, maybe if it's not as urgent, on my next scheduled meeting or phone call with the agent I work with, I would just bring up, hey, I've been having some trouble getting response from, the buyer's agent. Have you heard anything on this? And that way you can kind of get any updates. There's a potential, as I always mentioned, that there's been a side conversation. Maybe they went to the inspection and the other agent was there and they had a little side conversation about something and your agent just forgot to update you. So by doing this with non-urgent items, it kind of reminds your agent to keep you back in the loop if there are those side conversations about anything related to the transaction. And then this also just helps the agent be able to escalate further as needed. There's always gonna be situations where we kind of hit our limit on how much we can do as the transaction coordinator, and things that become the agent's responsibility or something the agent want to take more control of and escalate the situation to someone. So don't be afraid to bring something to your agent's attention. You're not failing as a TC, especially if you've tried a couple times your original way, you've tried tip number 1, things like that. So don't be afraid to bring it to the agent's attention if the other agent's really giving you lackluster response or no response at all. So your agent will be able to help you, and sometimes they'll even send a reminder on your behalf. I have this happen all the time, like on a group text or an email, please be sure to copy Allison, my transaction coordinator, she'll be able to get you faster responses, things like that. And that can go a long way too in helping any type of party to the transaction remember to copy you and reach out to you first. All right, and lastly, tip number 3 is going to be something to do throughout all of your transactions. And that is to always be reiterating that you and your agent are a team. So some people may think, and this varies because different transaction coordinators do all different kinds of roles. Maybe you're just a paperwork person or something like that, and they may not understand how important you are to the transaction, what level of service you provide your agent. On some TCs, deals and stuff, you may be the very first primary contact for the transaction. So it depends how the agents you're working with and how you structure your business, but no matter what, we typically need to be copied on all pertinent communication to the transaction. So we want to reiterate to all of the other parties involved and that other agent who may be unresponsive that we are a team with our agent. So a couple ways to do this. I always first off encourage using team-like communication. So saying, we want to follow up on this document. Do you have this ready for us? Do you have any updates for us? So taking that I out of your communication and using terms like we. And the second part of this is also to make sure you're copying your agent. I've never in all my experience had an agent say, please don't copy me on emails. So I guess if they did, that wouldn't apply as much here, but I recommend always copying the agent. That way the other agent recognizes their name. They kind of adds that escalation factor we just talked about in tip number 2. And it can just help you say, we, us, our team, things like that. Use that kind of communication to establish yourself. And they'll start to realize it's really important to copy both of you. So that's my third tip on that. So I hope you found these tips helpful. Unfortunately, unresponsive, parties we're working with in any industry and in real estate are just part of the transaction. So it may come across that way, but remember, it's probably not anything personal. So just apply these 3 tips and hopefully you'll have responses in no time. All right, any other Ask Allison questions you have, drop comments on this video below and I will make some videos for you guys. I've got some quick videos on this too. If you ever want to go back and reference, check out our shorts videos in our feed. So thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you enjoyed this video or any of our content, please hit the subscribe button and like this video. We really enjoy making great content for you guys. Any new questions or content requests, comment below. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great day.